What's up everybody, Game Over Jesse here with Champion Ashley and 5J Gaming to discuss all of the recent Nintendo news. We have new information on Mario, Metroid Prime 4, Pokemon on Switch, and much more, including answering questions sent in from fans like yourself. Each of these videos will be split up into their own video. Metroid Samus Returns is releasing on the Nintendo 3DS. For those who don't know, it is a remake of the original Metroid 2 on the Game Boy. However, long before the announcement of Samus Returns, a fan was working for years on his own remake. Nintendo reached out to him and asked him to stop this remake. However, all of the time spent wasn't for nothing, because he has now been hired by Moon Studios, the developer studio for Ori and the Blind Forest, which is a game that takes a lot of inspiration from the Metroid and Castlevania style games. In fact, the genre itself is referred to as Metroidvania because it essentially copies and pastes the game mechanics and exploration styles of those games. Ori and the Blind Forest has done so well that the developers have began a sequel called Ori and the Will of the Wisp, which is the game the fan behind the remake will be working on. So in the end, all of the work he spent wasn't for nothing, as he's now working for Microsoft and Moon Studios on this new sequel inspired by the original Metroid games. Have any of you played the original Ori?
Honestly, before you actually started talking about it, I didn't know what Ori was.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry for anyone watching who are probably cursing at me right now for not knowing Ori, but I'm sorry. I probably will get into it later, so I don't really have too much of an opinion on this topic, but as you were saying about fans being able to create fan versions of Nintendo's games, I feel like Nintendo should feel happy about that, is that their fans really are creating their own worlds out of what Nintendo has made. I mean, if I were Nintendo, I would feel happy about this, because that means, hey, people did like my work, and they're being inspired to make their own worlds, their own games.
Right.
Yeah, it's always nice as a creator knowing that you've inspired someone else to start doing their own thing.
Yeah.
But in the same way, I can see why, especially with the official Metroid 2 remake coming. There was a similar situation with the Twilight Princess HD fan project. There was a group of people working. They were led by a fan named Tomoya, who was creating his own version of Twilight Princess HD. He was actually going above and beyond just remaking it. It was all based around the Dolphin emulator, but they were going in, making all of the, completely redoing all of the textures, adding higher polygon count models so that they don't just look like they're rendered in HD, they actually look like they're meant to be in an HD game.
Right.
And I believe they even had hopes of, after they finished the project, they were going to create their own dungeon and their own boss fight and everything for the game.
Wow.
They were going to basically have their version of a Twilight Princess Shadow Temple in the game. So
Yeah, I heard a lot about that.
yeah, Nintendo, this exact same situation with Metroid, Nintendo reached out to them, said, hey, you can't do this, here's a cease and desist thing. So they continued working on it, but they just went quiet. They weren't accepting any more Patreon support or anything like that to continue the game.
Sure.
But they did keep working on it, and then we found out the reason that they were asked to stop was Nintendo was working on their own Twilight Princess HD remake for the Wii U, but that was being developed by the third party Tantalus.
Yeah.
So I wonder if whenever Nintendo reaches out and has people stop working on fan projects, I wonder if that's because they're working on their own and they're thinking, well, if these people are making the HD remake for free, then why would people come and play our remake when it costs money? But anyways, it's an odd situation. Nintendo announced 2 Metroid games at this year's E3 after years and years of not having a single mention of Metroid.
Yeah.
But any final thoughts on the news from you guys?
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to weigh in a little bit there. I was given Ashley her time there. So I did get a chance to play Ori and the Blind Forest. Initially, I had heard lots of stirrings about that game because of its terrific art style as an indie game, and it was, talked up as going to be going to the Video Game Awards. So I got that, and my wife actually started playing it, and she started tapping on me saying, "Oh, this part's really hard. Can you play it for me?" So I had some experience later in the game, and then I decided I should start playing it for myself. And it is very much a Metroidvania. It has a little character who travels around a giant map without, a whole lot of direction on where to go, and you're collecting power-ups that unlock the ability to get to places you couldn't get to before. Exactly that same kind of progression that you would expect. And the art style was indeed very striking and beautiful, and it had this great touching story that's, light on words, but had lots of cutscenes that had a lot of emotion in the character models and stuff. I never did get to finish the game, but from what I could tell, it started off with a very emotional beginning to the game. Breaks your heart right away. And I imagine that it had probably a very good climactic ending that I'd like to get around to again. So I think this is great that somebody out there recognized the talent of somebody that made a single-handed, from the bottom up remake. They didn't just reskin a Game Boy game, right? They basically took like Zero Mission or something, that whole engine, and completely redid AM2R or Metroid 2 and called it AM2R. I'm glad somebody recognized it. I understand Nintendo's got their legal thing, and it doesn't endear them to their fans or people that could be their fans. But I feel like there's room for them to grow there. Like how on YouTube they used to not accept, anyone at all to be able to do their live plays, and now they at least have some program to say, okay, well, we can share revenue if you meet this level of viewership or whatnot. That's not enough. They need to progress that, but I feel like in this instance with fan games, they're not even at that point. So I feel that it's just another instance of Nintendo being behind the times. This is something where you say, hey, that's great, we do need you to stop working, but maybe you come work for us. Or, hey, tweak a couple of things and don't call it AM2R anymore.
Yeah. There was, I can't believe I didn't remember this earlier, but there was another situation, too, that I can think of where this fan was working on, who's actually a friend of this channel. I believe he's been on a couple of videos before, discussion videos, but he was making his own Zelda Maker style game, and Nintendo reached out to him and was like, hey, same story, you can't do this is our property, blah blah blah.
Yep.
And all he had to do was change the main character you play as from a green tunic to a blue tunic, and instead of Zelda Maker, it's now Legend Maker.
Maker, yep.
Very subtle changes, but people still get the reference to Zelda. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And I believe I read a story later that he ended up making lots of additional changes based on how he had to take it in a new direction, and he ended up making a much bigger, grander game. And he was actually almost thankful that they had gave him a little push in another direction, because he ended up with a different product that he really liked.
Yeah, and the final story on this that I want to talk about is there was a fan remaking, I believe he was remaking a Sonic game where he was creating his own Sonic game using the engine of a previous Sonic game or something like that. Anyways, I believe his remake that he was working on, Sonic team ended up hiring him to work on an actual Sonic game. I believe it was Sonic, I'm not really sure. I should have done a bit more research, but
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Sega seemed to be really cool about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was something like that, to where he was working on his own fan game, and then they was like, hey, that's actually really good. We don't have anything
Sonic
we're working
Mania?
on right now.
Well, I thought that's how Sonic Mania got its start.
Possibly. They could have him doing that. And I think Capcom did something similar, where they took the actual fan project and just put it up
Street
on
Fighter Cross Mega Man game. Yeah.
If anyone wants to clarify in the comments for us, that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, obviously we don't have crystal clear memories on this.
Not even close.
This is all stuff that I remember reading like a year or 2 years ago, so it's not But yeah, there has been some situations where developers, because not all developers are evil, not saying Nintendo is evil, but
No,
there has been
but-
some cases where they're like, hey, that's actually really good. It looks like an actual polished game that we would make ourselves, so here's some money. Let us put it up on the Nintendo eShop or Steam or whatever and sell it as an actual game. So
Yeah.
there has been situations like that, but then sadly there are the situations where they're like, hey, no, you're just not allowed to do that. You need to stop. If you enjoy the videos on my channel, please consider subscribing, checking out my second channel focusing on movies and TV shows, and my Patreon where you can join in as a guest in upcoming videos, watch new videos first, you can have me join in and collaborate on videos for your own channel, have custom artwork or custom avatars made of yourself or for your channel, and much more.